Daniel Cross was the richest man in the city and perhaps one of the most feared. People spoke his name with respect but also with fear, for he was known as cold and hard, a man who never bent for anyone. His world was built on money, power, and control. He believed that every problem had a price, that every door opened when enough gold was laid before it. But tonight, as he sat alone in the hospital corridor, his world was breaking apart. The pale white lights above hummed, the machines inside his daughter's room beeped a rhythm that sounded like a countdown, and doctors whispered to one another in words he could not hear. For the first time in his life, money did not matter, power did not answer, and control slipped through his fingers like water. His daughter, Emily, was dying, and there was nothing he could do. Emily was the only light in his life. She was young, gentle, and carried a smile that could melt even the hardest of hearts. But Daniel had been a busy man, too busy building empires, too busy signing deals, too busy ruling his empire of steel and glass. Emily had grown up mostly in the care of others, raised by nurses, watched by tutors, guided by people Daniel hired but never really trusted. Yet Emily never complained. Even in her sickness, when her body grew weak and her strength drained day by day, she always smiled at him. She would whisper, "It's okay, Papa," as if she was the one comforting him, not the other way around. Now, as machines struggled to keep her alive, Daniel realized just how much time he had lost, how many moments he had missed, and how far away his heart had been from the only person who truly mattered. Maria, the maid, had always been quiet in the house. She moved like a shadow, gentle and unnoticed, yet somehow always present where she was needed. She was poor, born in the narrow streets of the city where hunger and hardship were constant companions. When Daniel had hired her years ago, she had seemed small and fragile, but her eyes carried a strength that was not easy to explain. She was deeply faithful, always whispering prayers under her breath, always carrying a quiet hope that most people in Daniel's world laughed at. Daniel never paid much attention to her. To him, she was just a servant, someone who kept the house clean, someone who did her work silently without asking for more. Yet there was something about her that Emily had always seen, something that connected them in a way Daniel never noticed. Emily trusted Maria. She would call her when she was sad, hold her hand when she was scared, and listen when Maria told stories of hope and faith. Over time, a secret bond grew between them, one that Daniel never cared to see. That night, after hours of waiting and listening to the endless whispers of doctors who shook their heads in doubt, Daniel finally rose from the hard bench in the corridor. He straightened his jacket, though for the first time it felt heavy on his shoulders. His steps were slow as he walked toward Emily's room. The door creaked as he pushed it open, and the sight before him made him stop in his tracks. There, beside the pale bed where Emily lay weak and fading, was Maria. She was on her knees, her head bowed, her hands clasped tightly together. Tears streamed down her face as her lips moved in soft whispers, words Daniel could not hear but felt were heavy with meaning. The beeping of the machines filled the silence between her words, and in that moment, the great billionaire froze. He had seen many things in his life. He had seen men beg for mercy, he had seen rivals crumble in defeat, and he had seen entire companies fall at his feet. But he had never seen this. A maid, a simple woman with nothing to her name, was kneeling beside his daughter with more love and desperation than he himself had shown. Her tears fell on Emily's hand, which she held gently as though afraid it might break. Emily, though weak and pale, seemed calmer with Maria beside her, as if the prayer itself gave her comfort. Daniel's heart, cold and heavy for so many years, beat in a way he did not understand. For the first time, he felt like an intruder in his own daughter's life, standing at the door while another's love filled the room. He stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. His mind told him to step in, to tell Maria to leave, to remind her of her place. But his heart, a heart that had long been silent, told him to wait. The man who was feared by many, the man who never bent, stood frozen at the sight of a maid's prayer. In that moment, all his power meant nothing, all his money was useless, and all his pride was hollow. The only sound was the steady beeping of the machines, the faint whisper of Maria's prayer, and the fragile breath of his daughter. Daniel Cross, the richest man in the city, realized he was powerless, and it shook him to his very core. And so, the night grew deeper, the hospital lights dimmed, and Daniel remained at the doorway, staring at a scene he could not forget. A billionaire, a maid, and a dying child. Love, faith, and helplessness tangled together in a way he had never imagined. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain: his world would never be the same again. Daniel did not sleep that night. He sat in the hospital chair near the door, watching the small room where his daughter lay. Maria never left Emily's side. She held her hand, prayed softly, and sometimes sang old songs in a voice so low it sounded almost like a whisper. Daniel, the man who had built towers that touched the sky, had never felt so small. His mind kept repeating the same question: why does she care so much? She was just a maid, paid to clean, to serve, to remain silent. And yet, she was the one showing the love and faith that Daniel himself struggled to find. The next morning, sunlight broke through the hospital windows. It painted the floor in soft golden lines. Doctors came in and out, checking Emily, changing medicines, speaking words that sounded heavy but empty. Daniel listened, but his heart was far away. Every word from the doctors sounded the same: stable but weak, no improvement, we are trying. Money could buy the best machines, the best doctors, even the most advanced treatment in the city. But it could not buy hope, and it could not buy the life slipping away from Emily. Daniel's eyes followed Maria. He noticed how Emily's pale lips curved into a faint smile every time Maria whispered to her. The maid would wipe Emily's forehead with a damp cloth, smooth her hair, and keep whispering prayers. It was as if she believed that her faith alone could keep Emily alive. Daniel did not understand it, yet deep inside he felt something stir. For years, he had lived with walls built around his heart, walls made of money and pride. But now those walls had cracks, and through those cracks he saw a truth he had never wanted to face. His daughter needed love, not just treatment. She needed someone who cared with heart, not with money. Hours passed, and Daniel finally spoke to Maria. His voice was low, almost unsure. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, standing at the edge of the room. Maria looked up, her eyes red from crying. She did not answer right away. Instead, she squeezed Emily's hand gently, as if drawing strength from the fragile girl. "Because she is not just your daughter," Maria whispered. "She is a soul. And every soul deserves love, even in the darkest hour." Her words struck Daniel like a blow. He had always thought of Emily as his child, his heir, his only bloodline. But Maria saw her as more, as someone precious simply for existing, not for belonging. For the first time in years, Daniel felt ashamed. He thought of all the birthdays he missed, all the dinners he skipped, all the nights Emily had been alone while he was locked in meetings or traveling for business. He remembered her soft voice when she had once asked, "Papa, will you stay home tonight?" And how he had replied without looking at her, "Not tonight, Emily, maybe next time." Now there would be no next time. The memories burned in his mind, and guilt weighed on his chest like a stone. As the day grew darker, news spread outside the hospital. Reporters gathered, hungry for stories about the billionaire's daughter. Cameras flashed, microphones waved in the air, but Daniel ignored them. He stayed inside, close to Emily. Yet even in his silence, whispers began. Some said the great Daniel Cross was finally defeated. Others said money had failed him, and pride had turned to dust. But inside the quiet hospital room, none of that mattered. Only 3 hearts existed there: Emily's fragile one, Maria's faithful one, and Daniel's breaking one. That night, something unexpected happened. Emily stirred, her weak eyes opening slowly. Daniel rushed to her side, his hands trembling. "Emily," he whispered, his voice shaking, "I'm here." But Emily's gaze moved past him and rested on Maria. A soft smile touched her lips. "Will you sing again?" she asked in a voice so faint it almost broke. Maria's tears flowed again, but she nodded and began to sing an old lullaby, one she used to hum while working in the house. Daniel listened as Emily's breathing grew steady, calmer, as if the song was more powerful than any machine around her. Daniel felt his throat tighten. His daughter had not asked for him, not asked for his words or his touch. She had asked for Maria's song. And it cut deep into Daniel's soul. After a long silence, Emily drifted back into sleep, her hand still holding Maria's tightly. Daniel stood frozen, his eyes burning with emotions he did not want to admit. He finally turned to Maria and whispered, "Why her? Why not me?" His voice cracked like a man who had lost all armor. Maria looked at him with calm, gentle eyes. "Because she feels love," she said softly. "And love is stronger than money, stronger than fear, stronger than anything else. You have given her the world, Mr. Cross, but not your heart. Children know when hearts are closed. Emily found mine open, so she came to it. But it's not too late for yours. The words sank into Daniel like seeds into dry soil. Not too late. Could it be true? Could he still give Emily the love he had hidden away for so long? For the first time, he reached out and touched his daughter's hand. Her skin was cold, but she did not pull away. Instead, her small fingers twitched, as if holding him in her sleep. It was a simple gesture, yet it broke Daniel completely. He sank into the chair beside the bed, his other hand covering his face. The great billionaire, who had stood tall above the world, now wept silently beside his dying child. Maria said nothing. She only prayed softly, letting her words fill the silence as Daniel's tears finally fell. In that room, something shifted. Daniel was no longer the untouchable man of steel. He was a father, broken and searching. Maria was no longer just a maid. She was a bridge between a man's pride and a child's heart. And Emily, though fading, was the thread that tied them together. For the first time, Daniel felt hope, not from the doctors, not from the machines, but from the fragile bond of faith and love growing before his eyes. The next morning began with a storm. Rain hammered the hospital windows, and the sky outside looked as if it carried the grief of the world. Daniel had not left the chair by Emily's bed. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie gone, his eyes red from sleeplessness. For the first time in his life, he did not care about appearances. His daughter's pale face was the only thing that mattered. Machines beeped steadily, but the sound was fragile, as if at any moment it could stop. Maria came with a small cup of tea. Her hands trembled as she offered it. "You should drink," she said gently. Daniel took it, his fingers brushing hers for the first time in years. He muttered a quiet thank you, surprising even himself. He was not used to saying those words. Maria only nodded, her face calm but tired, her eyes swollen from nights of crying. Doctors soon entered, whispering to each other. One of them, a man Daniel had personally flown in from another country, looked grave. He cleared his throat and spoke. "Mr. Cross, we have done everything possible. Emily's body is shutting down. It may be a matter of hours." The words hit Daniel harder than any business loss or betrayal he had ever faced. Hours. Just hours left for his little girl. His heart twisted, and for the first time, he felt true fear, not fear of losing money or reputation, but fear of losing the only piece of his heart that ever mattered. He looked at Emily, her chest rising weakly, her lips pale, and he felt like falling apart. Maria's hand rested on his arm. "Do not give up," she whispered. "Where science stops, faith begins." Daniel wanted to argue, to shout that faith was not medicine, that prayers could not replace treatment. But something inside him kept him silent. He saw the calm in Maria's eyes, the same calm Emily seemed to draw strength from, and his anger melted into helplessness. As the storm raged outside, Emily stirred. Her small eyes opened slowly, searching the room. She smiled faintly when she saw Maria, then noticed her father sitting close. Her weak lips trembled into words. "Papa, will you stay?" Daniel's throat closed. Tears blurred his vision. He took her hand quickly, clutching it as if it was his lifeline. "Yes, Emily," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm here. I won't leave you again." A faint tear slid down Emily's cheek, and she closed her eyes, her breathing shallow but steady. Hours passed in silence. Daniel prayed for the first time in his life. The man who had never bent his head before anyone now bowed beside his daughter's bed. He did not know what words to say, so he simply spoke from his heart. "God, don't take her. Take everything else, my money, my pride, my power, but not her. Please." Maria's eyes filled with tears as she watched him. She had never imagined the hard, cold man she worked for could cry like this. She knelt beside him, and together, Billionaire and Maid, they prayed side by side for the fragile girl lying between them. Then, suddenly, Emily's body jerked. The machines blared with sharp alarms. Doctors rushed in, shouting orders, their hands moving fast. Daniel's heart froze. He was shoved aside as they tried to revive her. "She's crashing," one doctor shouted. Daniel felt his knees weaken. He grabbed Maria's hand without thinking, holding on to her as if she were the only anchor in a storm. His whole life flashed before him, not his business deals, not his wealth, not his towers, but every tiny memory of Emily. Her first steps, her laughter, the way she used to run to him when she was little. And now, he might lose all of it in seconds. The room was chaos, beeping machines, rushing nurses, shouting doctors. Maria's lips moved in silent prayer, her tears falling on Daniel's hand. He whispered Emily's name again and again, his voice breaking with each call. And then, silence. The machines steadied. The doctors froze for a moment, looking at the screens. One of them let out a breath of relief. "She's back," he said. "Her heart is beating again." Daniel almost collapsed, tears streaming freely down his face. He clutched Maria's hand tighter, whispering, "Thank you, thank you." He didn't even know who he was thanking, the doctors, Maria, or God. Perhaps all three. But the lead doctor's face remained serious. "She won't last long if we don't try something new," he said. "There is an experimental treatment overseas, but it is risky, and it may not work." Daniel stood, wiping his tears roughly. "Do it. Whatever it takes. I'll pay whatever it costs." The doctor shook his head. "It's not about money. It's about time. And faith. If she doesn't have the strength inside, even this treatment won't save her." Daniel turned to look at Emily, then at Maria. He realized the truth. Money could buy machines, doctors, treatments. But Emily's strength came from love, and Maria had given that when he had not. That night, Daniel sat beside Maria, his voice low. "You've given her something I couldn't," he said. "I don't know how to thank you." Maria shook her head. "Don't thank me. Thank her. She's fighting because she loves you. She just needs to know you love her too." Daniel looked at his daughter and felt his heart open in a way it never had before. For the first time, he leaned close and whispered in her ear, "Emily, I love you. I always have. Forgive me for not showing it. But I swear, if you fight, I will never leave your side again." Emily's fingers twitched in his hand, as if answering. Maria smiled through her tears. The storm outside began to quiet, but inside Daniel's heart, a new storm had started, a storm of love, fear, and hope all at once. He had everything in the world, yet nothing mattered now except the small girl in the bed and the prayers of a maid he had once ignored. And as midnight came, Daniel made a decision that would change everything. Morning came grey and heavy. The storm outside had passed, but inside the hospital, the tension only grew heavier. Daniel had not slept. He sat beside Emily's bed, watching every fragile breath. Each rise and fall of her chest was like a fragile thread holding him to life. Maria sat nearby, her rosary clutched in her hands, lips moving in silent prayers. The lead doctor entered with a folder. His expression was grim but steady. "Mr. Cross," he began, "there is a new treatment, experimental, untested on children. It is being performed only in one hospital abroad. If we act quickly, there may be a chance." Daniel stood at once. "Arrange the transport. Call my pilot. I'll fund whatever it takes." But the doctor raised a hand. "You must understand, the journey itself is dangerous. Emily's body is weak. Moving her could trigger another collapse. She may not even survive the flight." The words struck Daniel like a blade. If he moved her, she might die. If he didn't, she would certainly die. It was a cruel choice, one money could not shield him from. His chest tightened, and for a moment he could not speak. Maria's voice broke the silence. "If there is even a small chance, we must try. Life is worth the risk. God will guide her." Daniel looked at her, then at his daughter. Emily's tiny hand rested in his, limp but warm. His heart ached at the thought of losing her without trying. He bent his head close to her ear and whispered, "Emily, do you hear me? We're going to fight. I promise. But I need you to be strong." Her eyelids fluttered weakly, and though no words came, a faint squeeze touched his hand. It was enough. "Prepare everything," Daniel told the doctor. "We leave tonight." The hours that followed were a blur. Nurses bustled, machines were arranged for travel, and Daniel's private jet was converted into a flying hospital. For the first time, Daniel didn't bark orders. He didn't demand. He only stayed by Emily's side, holding her hand, whispering promises, and silently praying with Maria. At sunset, they wheeled Emily toward the waiting ambulance. Rain-washed streets glistened under city lights. The sound of sirens cleared their path, yet Daniel heard only the faint beeping of the portable monitor attached to Emily. Each beep was a reminder of how close they were to losing her. Inside the ambulance, Daniel sat pressed against Emily, Maria on the other side. Neither spoke. Both knew words were too fragile now. Maria reached for Emily's hand and began to pray softly. To Daniel's surprise, the prayer soothed him too, as if her voice carried a strength he lacked. When they finally reached the jet, Daniel froze. For all his billions, all his power, he had never felt such fear. What if this was the last time his daughter breathed? His legs almost gave out. Maria steadied him with a gentle hand. "She feels your strength," she whispered. "If you break, she will break. Hold on for her." Daniel nodded slowly, then climbed aboard. The jet roared into the dark sky. The city lights vanished beneath them, swallowed by clouds. Inside, the cabin was filled with medical equipment and tense silence. Nurses checked Emily's vitals constantly. Daniel's eyes never left her face. Halfway through the flight, alarms shrieked. Emily's monitor spiked wildly. Nurses shouted, scrambling. One of them called out, "She's going into shock." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Do something," he shouted, his voice breaking with panic. The medical team moved fast, inserting needles, adjusting machines, pressing against her tiny chest. Daniel felt useless, powerless. He gripped Maria's hand so tightly it hurt. "Pray," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Please, pray louder." Maria closed her eyes and cried out with all her heart, her voice filling the cabin with desperate faith. Her words mixed with the thunder outside, rising like a plea to the heavens. Daniel, choking on his fear, bowed his head too. For the first time, he spoke not to doctors, not to machines, but to the God he had ignored all his life. "Don't take her. Please. I'll give anything, do anything. Just let her live." And then, silence. The alarms steadied. The monitor beeped in rhythm again. Emily's small body relaxed. Nurses sighed in relief. Daniel collapsed into his seat, tears streaming down his face. He covered his eyes, shaking. Maria touched his shoulder gently. "She is still fighting. Do not stop believing." Hours later, the jet landed. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky with pale light. Ambulances rushed Emily straight into the foreign hospital. Daniel followed, Maria at his side. The new doctors wasted no time. They explained the treatment quickly, an experimental procedure that would either restart her failing systems or end them completely. Daniel felt the weight of the decision crash upon him. He turned to Maria, his voice raw. "What if she doesn't survive?" Maria's eyes shone with quiet strength. "Then she will know she was loved until her last breath. But if she does survive, it will be because you believed enough to try." Daniel looked at his daughter one last time before they wheeled her away. He bent down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Fight, my little one. Fight for me, and I'll never leave you again." The doors closed. For the first time in his life, Daniel Cross, the man who controlled empires, who bent the city to his will, was powerless. He could only wait. And pray. The waiting room was silent, yet Daniel felt it roar louder than any storm. A wall of glass separated him from the surgery ward where Emily was being prepared. White coats moved quickly, machines beeped steadily, but all he could see was his little girl lying still under the harsh lights. He had faced business rivals, courtroom battles, hostile boardrooms, yet none of those had made him tremble like this. His hands shook as he pressed them together. Every breath felt heavy. For once, money, power, and influence had no meaning. Maria sat a few chairs away, her rosary glinting under the bright light. Her lips moved in constant prayer, her head bowed low. She hadn't stopped since the moment Emily was taken inside. Daniel watched her for a moment. There was a peace in her face, even with tears running down her cheeks. A peace he had never known. Finally, he spoke. "How can you sit there so calm? Don't you fear she won't come back?" Maria lifted her eyes. They were red but steady. Of course I fear. But I also believe. Fear alone will crush us, but faith keeps us standing. Daniel leaned back, covering his face with his hands. Faith, he whispered bitterly. I never had any. I always thought money could fix everything. Until now. His voice broke. And now I might lose her. Maria moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. You cannot buy miracles, Daniel. But you can ask for them. God listens, even when we are late to call him. Daniel lowered his hands slowly. He stared at her, searching for doubt in her words, but found none. Something inside him cracked. For the first time in years, he wanted to believe. Hours dragged on. Every minute felt like a battle. A red light above the surgery doors glowed, refusing to turn green. Nurses came and went, their faces unreadable. Daniel's mind filled with memories, Emily's laughter when she was small, her first steps across the marble floor of their mansion, the way she used to tug at his sleeve when she wanted him to stay home instead of leaving for work. He had missed so many moments, too busy building an empire. Now, he would give it all away just to hear her laugh once more. A sudden sound broke through, the sharp buzz of alarms from the surgery ward. Doctors rushed to Emily's side, shadows moving quickly behind the glass. Daniel jumped to his feet, his chest burning with panic. What's happening? He shouted, slamming his hand against the glass. No one answered. Nurses blocked the view as the team surrounded Emily. The beeping of her monitors grew frantic, then terrifyingly faint. Daniel's knees weakened. He pressed his forehead against the glass, whispering, No, no, please, not now. Don't take her. Maria gripped his arm tightly. Pray, she said, her voice firm. Pray like you mean it. For the first time, Daniel dropped to his knees in the middle of the waiting room. He didn't care who saw. His suit creased, his dignity vanished. With tears streaming down his face, he whispered words he had never spoken before. God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to say. But please, please don't take her. Take everything I have, but leave her. She is all I am. Maria knelt beside him, her voice joining his broken plea. Together, their whispers filled the room, carrying hope through the silence. Minutes felt like hours. Then, suddenly, the alarms behind the glass steadied. The frantic movement slowed. The doctor's shoulders eased. A nurse stepped out, her mask damp with sweat. She's holding on, the nurse said softly. It was close, but she's fighting. Daniel's chest collapsed with relief. His hands shook as he gripped the nurse's arm. Is she safe? Will she survive? The nurse hesitated. We are not done. The treatment is dangerous. She is not out of risk yet. But she is stronger than we expected. Your daughter is a fighter. Daniel fell back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. Maria touched his shoulder with a smile through her tears. You see, she is not alone. She has you. She has all of us. And she has God. The hours stretched long into the night. Every time the doors opened, Daniel's heart stopped. At one point, he stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time, those glittering towers of glass and steel, monuments to his power, felt meaningless. I built all this, he whispered, but I could not build what matters most. Maria joined him quietly. Sometimes, she said, we need to lose control to find what is real. At last, just before dawn, the red light above the doors switched off. The surgery was over. A doctor stepped out, weary but calm. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he rushed forward. Your daughter is alive, the doctor said. The treatment worked, for now. Her body responded better than we hoped. But she is very weak. The next 48 hours will decide everything. Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he stumbled back, unable to speak. Alive. The word echoed through him like sunlight breaking into darkness. Maria pressed her hands together in prayer, whispering thanks with trembling lips. They were allowed inside briefly. Emily lay pale, still surrounded by machines, but her chest rose and fell steadily. Her tiny hand rested on the sheets. Daniel reached for it, and when her fingers twitched slightly in his grasp, his heart soared with fragile hope. He bent close and whispered, "I'm here, Emily. I won't leave. Not ever again." For the first time in his life, Daniel Cross felt powerless, and yet, in that powerlessness, he discovered something greater. A love stronger than wealth, a hope beyond reason, and a faith he had never known. But deep down, he knew the battle was not over. The next 2 days would decide whether Emily lived, or slipped away forever. The hospital room was dim, the steady beeping of machines filling the silence. Emily lay motionless, her face pale as snow. Tubes and wires surrounded her small body. The doctor's words echoed in Daniel's mind, "The next 48 hours will decide everything." He hadn't moved from her bedside. His suit was wrinkled, his tie long forgotten. Billionaire Daniel Cross, once the most powerful man in the city, now looked like a desperate father, tired, broken, but refusing to leave. Maria sat nearby, rosary in hand. She prayed quietly, her soft voice mixing with the sound of the machines. She hadn't slept either, but her face carried a strange strength, as if faith itself kept her awake. Every hour, Daniel leaned forward, searching for signs. A twitch of her hand. A flutter of her eyelids. Anything. But Emily remained still. His heart broke more with each passing moment. Late into the night, the storm finally came. The monitors beeped faster, alarms screeched. Doctors rushed inside, their voices sharp and urgent. "She's crashing," someone shouted. "Her heart rate is falling." Daniel froze, terror flooding him. He grabbed Emily's hand, his own trembling. "No, no, not now," he whispered. His voice cracked. "Please, Emily, stay with me." Maria rushed to his side, dropping to her knees. "Pray with me," she begged. Her hands clasped tightly as she cried out, "God, do not take her. Give her back to her father." Daniel's chest heaved. For the first time, he shouted with all his soul, "God, don't take her. Please. I was blind, I was lost, I wasted so much time. Don't punish her for me. Take everything I own, but not her. Not my child." His voice broke into sobs. The doctors worked furiously, pushing medicine, calling numbers, moving machines. The alarms screamed louder, then suddenly, silence. The longest silence Daniel had ever heard. And then, beep. A weak sound, then another. The heart monitor flickered back to life. The doctors sighed with relief. "She's stabilizing," one said. "She's fighting back." Daniel collapsed into the chair, his face buried in Emily's small hand. Tears poured freely. Maria wept too, whispering thanks as she clutched her rosary. Hours passed in quiet waiting. The storm had passed, but Emily's body was weak. Daniel never let go of her hand. He whispered to her, not knowing if she heard, "I'm sorry for every time I left you alone. I'm sorry I chose money over you. If you wake up, I promise, I'll never make that mistake again. You are my whole world, Emily." The morning sun crept through the window, painting the room in golden light. For the first time in days, the air felt warm. Daniel lifted his tired eyes, and froze. Emily's fingers twitched. Then her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, her eyes opened. "Daddy," her voice was weak, but it was real. Daniel shot up from his chair, gripping her hand tightly. "Emily, I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." His voice broke as tears streamed down his face. He kissed her forehead again and again, sobbing like a man reborn. Maria gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands. She whispered, "Thank you, God. Thank you." Emily's eyes moved slowly toward Maria. She gave the faintest smile. "You prayed, didn't you?" Maria nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Every moment, child. I never stopped." Daniel turned to Maria then, his chest heaving with emotion. He stood, walked to her, and for the first time in his life, he bowed his head to someone he once called just a maid. His voice shook as he said, "Thank you. You saved my daughter, not with money, not with medicine, but with faith." Maria shook her head. "I only prayed. It was God who listened." The moment struck deep. Billionaire Daniel Cross, feared by rivals, bowed in gratitude to the woman he had once overlooked. The nurses watching at the doorway whispered in shock. They had never seen him like this. Over the next few days, Emily grew stronger. Each breath steadier, each smile brighter. Daniel stayed by her side every hour, feeding her soup, telling her stories, holding her hand. Business calls went unanswered. Meetings were cancelled. Nothing mattered now but Emily. One evening, Emily whispered, "Daddy, can Maria stay with us always?" Daniel looked at Maria, then at his daughter. His answer came without hesitation. "She's family now. She'll never leave." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hands together, whispering thanks again. News of the billionaire's change spread quickly. Employees whispered about how Daniel now greeted them with kindness. Neighbors saw him walking slowly with Emily in the hospital garden, smiling, laughing like an ordinary man. And the story of how he had fallen to his knees in prayer spread like fire, shocking everyone who had known him as proud, cold, and untouchable. For the first time in his life, Daniel understood the truth. Money could build empires, but only love could save hearts. And as he sat beside his daughter's bed, holding her hand, he whispered, "You gave me a second chance, Emily. You and Maria. I won't waste it."